September 1028. The gates of the 20 Empire opened. The heavy doors slowly swung wide. Light poured into the dark hall. A man approached with steady steps. He had short black hair and narrow black eyes. Calix stopped. His mother, Terex, lowered her head. I have brought Prince Mu with me. Calix lifted an unwrapped object. This is the gift we promised. Will you accept it? Stephanie sat upon the throne. Calix suddenly dropped the bundle onto the floor. Blood splattered in all directions. Stephanie's pupils shrank at once. How dare you? He clenched his teeth. She was Stephanie, the Empress Dowager of the 20 Empire. Calix said, I told you to behave yourself. And yet, Calix glared at her. The moment I was gone, you killed the Empress. Terex, Calix Delgado, Emperor of the 20 Empire. He simply stood there in silence. If you keep this up, Calix's gaze turned icy. I will have no choice but to kill your mother. Time passed. Water rippled gently. Oscar stood beside the bathtub, holding a document. I didn't expect the Empress Dowager to get rid of the Empress so quickly. Calix leaned back in the bath, shrouded in steam. His eyes were closed. He seemed completely unconcerned. Oscar reported with a grave expression. Rumors are already spreading outside. They say your majesty has killed a third empress. Calix tilted his head back. Water droplets slid down. The Empress Dowager spread the rumors quickly. Oscar continued, we don't know what actions that faction will take. We must strengthen surveillance. Calix lowered his head. Yes, the Empress is dead. We cannot leave the Imperial Palace unguarded. We must protect it at all costs. Offer condolences to the late Empress's father and select an appropriate gift to send him. Oscar turned his face slightly. Understood. I'll handle it. Calix lowered his eyes. For now, I have to remain motionless in this damned place. 3 empresses sat in the most coveted seat in the empire, then died. No woman will want to become empress anymore. But an empress is still necessary to keep the opposing factions in check. Calix's hand clenched abruptly beneath the water. Is the Empress Dowager really my birth mother? I don't think so. How can I find the evidence? If only I can expose her. If only I can find proof she's an imposter, I can destroy the power behind her in an instant. Oscar flipped through the papers. Lasker has been attacking the north relentlessly. The northern region is in turmoil. Calix suddenly opened his eyes. The north? His gaze sharpened. Doesn't that mean the Snow family is involved as well? November 1028. War blazed across the northern lands of the 20 Empire. An ancient castle stood amid smoke and ruin. A blood-stained arrow was stuck in the ground. Eleanor Snow, the third daughter of House Snow. She wore armor. Her silver-white ponytail was stained with blood, yet her eyes remained resolute. Eleanor drew her sword. Its blade cut through the air. Alone, she faced an enemy formation bristling with weapons. Jaden Snow held a bloodied sword. He was Count Snow. Have Orn and Osborne escaped? Eleanor looked up, unhurried. They'll arrive soon. We were betrayed. House Snow, House Orn, and House Osborne had once resisted the zealot Lasker together. The followers of the god of destruction were their common enemy. One day, Duke Orn proposed luring Lasker near Snow territory and attacking together. Our family followed that plan, but Orn and Osborne betrayed us. Snow Castle was consumed by flames. House Snow could not withstand the endless enemy forces and could only watch its land be occupied. Eleanor rose to her feet, her back to her burning home. Her silver hair swayed in the firelight. Countless lives of House Snow were lost. Eleanor stood before the castle gates. She turned and gave the order. Close the gates. Don't let them into the center. Hold them off until I return. Jaden turned around. But where are you going? Eleanor's gaze was unwavering. To the capital. I'm going to seek an audience with His Majesty. Jaden stiffened. That mad emperor? What are you planning? A trace of hope flashed in Eleanor's violet eyes. I have a plan. The atmosphere in the council chamber of the Imperial Palace was heavy. Oscar reported to Calix. Because of Lasker's invasion, Snow territory stands on the brink of destruction. One minister objected. Impossible. House Snow wouldn't fall so easily. Oscar continued. Fortunately, Lasker has been contained. But Orn and Osborne betrayed the Snows. Calix's expression darkened. Oscar added, they will likely join forces. They may launch another attack soon. If House Snow falls, the entire North will collapse in short order. Orn and Osborne do not have the strength to stop Lasker. Once that happens, military conflict will become constant. Calix's pupils narrowed sharply. He sprang up and drew his sword. "Who's there?" A shadow dropped to one knee. "I have come in secret, despite the unforgivable crime. Your Majesty, please forgive me." It was a woman's voice. Calix's brow twitched. "How did you get in here?" The shadow answered, "I know a little magic." Calix sheathed his sword. "Why do you come here?" The figure raised her head. "I have a request." She slowly removed her hood. A silver-white ponytail spilled free. A pair of violet eyes looked at Calix. "I am Eleanor Snow." Eleanor said, "Please grant me a little of your time." Calix held up his short sword. "Snow, I've heard that name many times today." He turned away. "I can forgive your intrusion." But Calix's eyes turned dangerous. "If your request displeases me, you will die here." The wall lamps burned quietly. Calix sat down. "Speak. What is your request?" Eleanor stated calmly, "War has broken out in Snow territory. After our battle with Lasker, our losses were severe. Now Orn and Osborne have attacked as well. We are in grave danger." Eleanor folded her hands over her knees. Faint scars were visible on her neck. Calix's gaze passed over them. "I thought she was a mage, but she seems to be a warrior." Calix turned his head. "If I remember correctly, a territory has the right to deal with its own affairs. I have no intention of being drawn into a regional conflict." Eleanor lowered her head. "Yes, I understand. I hope your Majesty will allow me." Eleanor raised her eyes. A determined light shone in them. "To take the vacant seat of Empress." Her voice echoed in the chamber. "I want to claim it." Calix lowered his gaze and looked down at her. An ominous aura rose from Eleanor. Her hands clenched tightly. "So she's testing me." Violet-black energy coiled around Calix. He sat upon the throne. He did not move at all. The energy tightened. The pressure grew stronger. Eleanor stared at him. The energy erupted in an instant, sweeping through the hall. When it faded, Eleanor was breathing hard. Calix looked her over. "Overwhelmed by that power? It seems you're only human after all." Did news of the third Empress's death several months ago not reach the north? Eleanor lowered her eyes and sighed softly. "The news did reach us. That is why I came to see you." Eleanor lifted her head. Her violet eyes shone. "If I become Empress, your Majesty, I can do many things for you." Calix turned his head. "Do you think I don't understand your situation? Do you think I will be helpless if you fell?" Eleanor met his gaze. "Yes, because you value your people more than anyone." "Your Majesty, you are naive. No, you personally involve yourself in unnecessary battles. You always lure the enemy elsewhere, so as to reduce the destruction of civilians' homes." Calix was silent. Eleanor continued, "Is that Count Snow's evaluation of you?" "No, that is my judgment based on your Majesty's achievements." Eleanor's eyes were firm. "Attack if you wish. You are only making excuses for your recklessness." Calix fell silent for a moment. "Why do you want the position of Empress?" Eleanor answered frankly, "At this moment, I only want to protect House Snow." Calix let out a cold laugh. "To stop a territorial war, you want to become Empress?" He leaned forward. "Eleanor Snow, you are truly audacious." Eleanor did not back down. "I have simply resolved to protect my family at any cost. The Imperial Palace is not a warm place for an Empress, but I can withstand bitter cold. I can withstand sharpened blades too." Calix leaned back into the throne. "Fine. I look forward to seeing how much you can endure." Eleanor bowed deeply. "Thank you for granting my request. I will spend the rest of my life repaying this grace." She raised her head. "Then, your Majesty, may I return to the north? I must go back and help my father as soon as possible." "No, Miss Snow," Calix's voice rang out. Eleanor turned sharply, her eyes flashing with alarm. "You don't trust me?" Calix pressed a hand to the armrest. "How can I trust you? We've only known each other a few hours." Calix rose to his feet. "I'll have someone take you to rest. From now on, I will personally intervene in northern affairs." Morning sunlight spilled into the bedroom. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, her back tense. He seems to be an emperor who keeps his promises. But if it is too late, Snow Castle will fall. Eleanor clasped her hands over her knees. "All I can do is pray Father can hold on." She gazed out the window. "Brother, in this war I lost my cousins. I also lost my brother." A sword plunged heavily into the snow. Eleanor, wearing armor, knelt on one knee. Exhausted, A flash of memory. Her brother stood before her. Be careful. Ellie, stay behind me. Eleanor remembered. Did they hold their funeral? Or were they abandoned on the battlefield? It's cold. The bodies probably won't rot. Will they? Tears slipped down Eleanor's cheeks. No, they will rot. They're no longer alive. Their lives have ended. They are only inanimate remains. Eleanor's gaze hardened. No. So this is the only way. Her hands clenched tightly. I come from a family of queens. I will protect House Snow. I must become stronger. A knock came from outside the door. I have come by His Majesty's order. May I come in? Eleanor wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. Come in. The door slowly opened. A maid entered the room. The maid curtsied. I am the court maid Cecile. His Majesty sent me to provide anything you need. But may I ask whom I am serving? Eleanor turned slightly and asked in return, what did His Majesty say? Cecile answered respectfully. His Majesty only said to attend well to the honored guest of Tulip Palace. Eleanor replied coolly, is that so? Then that is all you need to know as well. A trace of resolve flashed in her violet eyes. I must hide my identity as the future empress for as long as possible in this palace. Who knows who the enemy is here? Oscar asked, is that true? I never expected the daughter of Count Snow to want to become empress. Is that woman not afraid for her life? Calix's gaze darkened. Oscar waved a document excitedly. Right? Right? You think something's off too, don't you? Everyone believes you mercilessly killed the empresses. That woman surely doesn't know the truth. She's outrageously bold. Calix interrupted him calmly. It seems she does know. Oscar froze. What? Calix continued. She knows I draw enemies away to reduce civilian casualties. Oscar's face was full of shock, but she wasn't on the battlefield. How could she know? Calix picked up a pen. She seems quite clever. The pen hovered over the page, which is precisely why I can't trust her. But at the same time, she's interesting. Oscar objected. Your Majesty, wasn't it too much to send the Black Knight Order north? It's the most elite of the 4 Knight Orders under your command. The strongest order. And you even sent Adrian with them. Calix rested his chin on one hand. For my future empress, I must show sufficient sincerity. If anything suspicious appears in the north, they can wipe it all out at once. Oscar suddenly understood. So that's why you sent the Black Knight Order. The territorial war itself may have been a trap orchestrated with the Empress Dowager. You don't believe that woman at all. Oscar asked again. If everything Miss Snow said is true, what will you do? Will you really marry her and make her empress? Calix's gaze sharpened. The vacant seat of empress. I want to obtain it. Calix closed his eyes. Those were her exact words. If she still wants the position of empress, the North Snow Territory was nothing but scorched earth and blood. Duke Orn roared. What are you talking about? How can His Majesty interfere in matters of the Northern Territories? Count Osborne agreed. Exactly. His Majesty has never interfered in the wars of this distant land. Adrian spoke coldly. An imperial order needs no explanation. But if you insist on understanding, he slowly drew his sword. To oppose Snow means to oppose the imperial family. Duke Orn's face turned pale. What is this supposed to be? Count Osborne urged quietly. We should withdraw for now. Something is wrong. Duke Orn was furious. Damn it. Everything was ready. He turned his horse around and withdrew his forces unwillingly, returning to his lands. Adrian looked around. Where is Count Jaden Snow? A silver-haired knight walked forward steadily. His shoulder armor was stained with blood. Please allow me to formally introduce myself. I am Snow's second son, Harvalian Snow. Harvalian turned away, his back proud and lonely. From this day onward, I am Count Snow. Jaden lay on the ground, both hands folded over the hilt of his sword. The end of an era, the birth of a new count. Count Jaden Snow fought for honor. Calix sat with his back to the room, looking out the window. If he had only commanded from the rear, he would not have died. What a pity. Eleanor's profile grew taut. Memories surged up. Her father, Jaden Snow, stood behind his daughter. He held Eleanor's hand and guided her grip on the sword. Here, hold it like this. Eleanor's small hand rested on the hilt. Jaden Snow smiled and nodded. Well done. You learned quickly. He's dead. Eleanor sat in shadow. Her bangs covered her eyes. He should not have been in the rear. She raised her head. "Thank you for your help, Your Majesty. Are my mother and siblings safe?" Calix looked at Eleanor. "They're all still alive." Calix leaned forward. "Do you still want to become empress?" Eleanor met his gaze. "Yes, I do." Calix leaned back in his chair. "Do you think House Snow, as the empress's family, will not be easily shaken by Orrin Osborne?" Eleanor remained seated. "Yes, my second brother, Count Harvelian Snow, will never waver either." Calix lowered his gaze and studied her. "Would you risk your life for your family?" Eleanor lowered her eyes. "My eldest brother and my father both died protecting our family." Eleanor raised her head, her eyes firm. "What is there left that I would not do?" Calix turned and stared at her. She was desperately holding back tears. Tears shimmered in Eleanor's eyes. Calix stood up. "The wedding will be held in 6 months." Eleanor sat alone on the bench. "Yes." Calix turned to leave. "I don't know whether you'll still be alive by then." Eleanor pressed a hand to her chest. "Don't worry. On the wedding day, I will appear in full dress, smiling more brilliantly than anyone." Calix looked back, a playful smile curling at his lips. "I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing how beautiful you'll be." Eleanor sat alone by the window. "Father, I will not cry. Not until I have crushed them all. I will never cry. I will become empress." Under a spotlight, a marionette was manipulated by strings. An empress is nothing more than a tool to bind him to the palace. An empress either submits or is eliminated. The emperor's enemies are like candles in the wind, ready to go out at any moment. In this empire, an empress is not precious. Eleanor's thoughts were hollow. Perhaps that had always been the rule until now. But from this moment on, everything will be different. That means someone desires this miserable position of empress. It also means my life will be in danger. More pitiful than the tragic empresses are the women who covet the seat behind them. Their silhouettes encircled the empty throne. Could it be them? A maid's voice came from outside the door. "Lady Snow, the second imperial consort of Rose Palace requests an audience." Eleanor turned her head. She came quickly. At present there were 4 imperial consorts. The first consort of Lily Palace, the second consort of Rose Palace, the third consort of Daisy Palace, and the fourth consort of Hyacinth Palace. Among them, Calliope Lionon, the second imperial consort of Rose Palace, would stop at nothing. She wanted only to win the emperor's heart and sit in the empress's seat. The door flew open. Calliope Lionon entered the room. She wore a luxurious green gown, and her red hair blazed like fire. Calliope's gaze swept over Eleanor. Her pupils tightened. "Why is she so beautiful? How insolent!" Calliope glared at Eleanor. She had not even risen to greet her. Eleanor lifted her eyes coldly. "So this is the woman who poisoned my breakfast." It had been half a month since Eleanor entered the palace. She stabbed at her food with a dining knife. "Before every meal, I test for poison with a silver blade." 2 days ago, the tip of the silver knife turned black. Cecile stood respectfully before the table. I had long suspected Cecile was one of Calliope's people. Cecile adjusted Eleanor's clothes, and she was the only one who could bring food into Tulip Palace. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Of course, the poison could also have come from someone in the kitchen. Not Cecile. But after the failed poisoning, I saw Cecile's swollen cheek. That confirmed my suspicions. "Calliope Lionon." Eleanor's lips curved in a faint sneer. "So you set your sights on me." Calliope glared furiously. "Why aren't you saying anything? Are you ignoring me? Do you think I don't know about you? I know everything. You shamelessly relied on the Snow family's reputation. But now things have changed." Cruel light flashed in Calliope's eyes. "I heard your father is dead." Calliope bent down. "So what exactly are you so confident about now?" Eleanor raised her eyes. "So that's why you poisoned my food." "What?" Calliope took a step back. "Poisoned you? Why would I poison you?" Eleanor remained seated. "I never specified my food, but it seems you know exactly what I'm talking about." Calliope let out a mocking laugh. "You dare slander me with such nonsense? Do you think His Majesty would believe you, a neglected would-be empress?" Eleanor slowly raised her eyes, her gaze icy. "Do you think I need his help?" Calliope trembled with rage. She suddenly swung her hand, a slap aimed at Eleanor. Eleanor's wrist turned. She dodged steadily. Calliope ground out, "You'll regret this." Eleanor Snow raised her eyes. A contemptuous smile touched her lips. Is that so? I never regret anything. In another room, silence reigned. A woman asked, a noblewoman of House Snow is now staying in Tulip Palace? Lens reported, she seems to be risking everything to protect her family and is trying to become empress. The woman considered this. Count Jaden Snow never wavered until his death. A black-haired woman smiled. Then, what of his daughter? Blood. A manor was brightly lit. A fist slammed onto the table. A blond man wiped his mouth with a handkerchief. He was Franklin Owen, Eleanor's fiancé. A figure behind him spoke. Young master, you're eating too quickly. Franklin didn't even look up. Just eat quietly. A woman sat across the dining table. She was Persephone Osborne, Eleanor's friend. Red wine was poured into a glass. Franklin lifted the glass. Damn it. I knew this would happen. I knew it would fail. I should have opposed the territorial war from the start. Persephone's eyes sharpened. Opposed it? Weren't you also the first person to betray House Snow? Persephone approached Franklin. Duke, you haven't slept yet. You have to rise early tomorrow. You should rest. Franklin stared at the candlelight. There are important matters ahead. I can't sleep. Persephone asked softly, Young master, you love Eleanor. Why are you so obsessed with the territorial war? If Eleanor learns she was betrayed, she'll break. Franklin suddenly gripped the sword hilt. Cold light gleamed off the blade. That is exactly why I have to isolate her completely. For a woman, Ellie is too strong, too independent, too self-reliant. I love Eleanor, but that is exactly what troubles me. Once House Snow is destroyed, there will be no one left by Ellie's side. Only then will she yield to me. Good and obedient. Persephone said nothing. Her eyes lowered. His fist slammed down on the table again. Franklin roared, damn it. Why is the Emperor interfering in the North? Who does he think he is? Eleanor. If this territorial war had succeeded. Persephone cut him off. No, even if it had succeeded, Eleanor would never submit to you. That's the kind of woman Eleanor is. Persephone bent down, her hand gently stroking Franklin's hair. But I have loved you for so long. I could submit to you. Unlike Eleanor, you never loved me. Not even for a moment. Morning light passed through the curtains. Eleanor drew them open and looked out at the palace beyond the window. The capital was noisy with preparations for the New Year festival. Yet this place was strangely quiet. Eleanor gazed at her reflection in the glass. So this is my position in the palace. A woman in Tulip Palace whom no one cares about. Eleanor's eyes hardened. That's fine. I'll change all of this very soon. She changed into mourning clothes. The period of mourning is over. I have to think about the survivors. Of course, I am one of the survivors too. She turned and walked toward the open doors. The light swallowed her whole. Eleanor leaned out from behind the door. Now it's time to meet His Majesty. Deep in the dungeon, an iron door clanged shut with a heavy lock. Calix looked down at a bound prisoner. The prisoner's back was covered in wounds. His head was lowered. Calix's face was expressionless. How interesting. Calix was sleeping on the bed. A man stabbed down at him with a knife. Calix jolted awake. He seized the prisoner. Water dripped down. A red-haired prisoner lifted his head, his face full of wounds. Calix gripped the man's jaw. You thought you could kill me by luck? On what basis? The prisoner remained silent, only raising his eyes to look at him. Calix's gaze turned cold. There is very strong mind control magic here. An attendant reported at the door, Your Majesty, Eleanor Snow requests an audience. A faint smile touched Calix's lips. It's time to act. If she wants to use me, then let her use me. Calix ordered, Bring her here. The torture instruments cast shadows across the table, stained with blood. Footsteps echoed through the corridor. Eleanor was brought to the dungeon. Oscar held a torch and led the way. Eleanor stopped and looked up. Firelight reflected in her violet eyes. She bowed to Calix. My greetings to you, Your Majesty. Calix stood with his back to her and did not turn. Then he glanced sideways. As you can see, I am Busa. This had better be important. Eleanor was utterly unafraid. May I come a little closer? Calix thought to himself. I summoned her to a place like this. Yet her expression hasn't changed at all. Calix said, Fine, if you can stomach it. Her footsteps sounded. Eleanor stepped closer, her gaze sweeping over the blood on the ground. At last it fell on the prisoner. I can sense black magic. It is indeed mind control magic. Calix turned to face Eleanor. You saw through it at a glance. Better than I expected. Eleanor slightly lowered her hand. You flatter me. Calix's smile turned playful. I don't much like having powerful mages near me. One never knows when they might deceive me. Eleanor looked straight at him. I will hide nothing from you. You are strong. You will not be deceived. Calix was silent for a moment. Then what do you want to say? Eleanor raised her eyes. As you know, the New Year festival is approaching. In the midst of such a grand and joyful celebration, are you not curious what might happen? Eleanor smiled faintly. Her lips curved with confidence. Her silver hair shimmered in the light, and her eyes held the certainty of someone who had already planned everything. A note of caution entered Calix's voice. You mean something will happen during the New Year festival? Eleanor's gaze settled on the prisoner. Was this man captured because he tried to assassinate your majesty? Calix answered without emotion. Regrettably, yes. Eleanor's expression grew grave. There are always people in the palace coveting your majesty's life. That is why you prefer to go to war yourself, isn't it? But because the empress's seat is vacant, you now cannot leave the palace. Calix's eyes sharpened. That's right. If there is no empress in place, while his majesty is absent at war, the palace will descend into chaos. A certain clarity flashed through Eleanor's eyes. So if your majesty remains in the capital, and a disaster occurs during the New Year festival, when people from all across the empire have gathered, Eleanor's pupils contracted sharply. His majesty will be branded an incompetent emperor. Approval flickered in Calix's eyes. Reasonable. Eleanor pressed on. Then it seems you already know what kind of disaster it will be. She looked up at Calix. It has been a long time since a large rift last appeared, hasn't it? Calix turned his head. A rift? A crimson beam tore through the darkness. A huge magic circle appeared on the ground. It was a passage opened by Lasker's followers, dragging monsters into this land. To open it required countless humans as sacrifices. Countless dark shapes were swallowed by the magic circle, eventually becoming pure energy. Calix folded his arms, expression stern. You mean they plan to use the crowd at the New Year festival as sacrifices and forcibly open a rift? Eleanor answered firmly. Yes, your majesty. Though I hope nothing happens. If something does happen, I will stop it. Calix's tone held a trace of doubt. You say that as if you could really stop those monsters. Eleanor lifted her head. An icy blue light radiated from her body. The ashes of House Snow seemed to appear behind her. If I succeed, then it will prove that House Snow has never abandoned its loyalty. Calix stared at her, inwardly shaken. She claims she will stand against monsters herself. She is willing to trade her life for my trust. His gaze grew complicated. It seems you value your family more than yourself. Eleanor turned her face slightly, her eyes gentle yet resolute. Because they are my family. The corner of Calix's mouth lifted almost imperceptibly. Family. Family worth protecting with one's life. I find myself almost envying her. Eleanor turned back and met Calix's gaze. If I become your empress, I will protect you the same way I protect my family. Eleanor stood side by side with Calix. Because you will become my family. Calix stared at her in silence. Eleanor held his gaze. He hesitated. Does he not believe my words? Eleanor's eyes were unwavering. But he will still choose me. She placed a hand on her chest. Calix looked at the battered prisoner. He's still alive. What tenacity! A thought flickered in Eleanor's eyes. If I may be of service to you, perhaps I can make proper use of him. Calix turned his head. Can you undo this man's brainwashing? Eleanor looked down at the prisoner. If he can survive the process, then I believe it's possible. Calix turned his back. Good. If you successfully remove the brainwashing and identify the mastermind, I will allow you to keep him by your side. Eleanor looked startled. How did you know I wanted this man? Calix did not turn around, because from the moment you entered, you looked at him with greedy eyes. Eleanor lowered her head. Am I really that greedy? Calix's tone held a trace of mockery. To think that the woman who will become my wife is gazing so eagerly at another man. I almost feel exceedingly. Eleanor was silent for a moment. I need someone of my own in the palace. Calix's expression turned serious. But this man was once their pawn. If the brainwashing cannot be lifted, one day he may point a blade at you. A cold smile curved Eleanor's lips. Do you think a blade like that could hurt me? Calix let out a restrained laugh. What confidence? Eleanor's tone sharpened. I am merely ferocious. After all, my future husband will not protect me. Calix raised a brow. Oh, is that so? Then why would you marry such a cold man? Eleanor answered without hesitation. Because I want power. I also have someone I want to turn my blade against. Her expression grew grave. How frightening. Then I can only pray that blade will never be turned toward me. Eleanor's eyes became utterly resolute. My blade will never, under any circumstances, be turned against my family. Calix turned around. Good. Take this man away. Eleanor bowed and accepted the order. As you command, Your Majesty. Soon I will bring you the answer you want. Eleanor walked alone through a sunlit corridor. It seems His Majesty accepted my words, and I even gained something unexpected. How nice. As Eleanor walked, she suddenly bumped into someone. A strange man with short brown hair quickly apologized. Ah, please forgive my rudeness. Eleanor examined him. Who is this man? He looks like a commoner. Eleanor studied the stranger before her. What are you doing at Tula Palace? The man awkwardly scratched his head. I was just taking a look around the garden. Eleanor pressed him. Are you a gardener? The man looked flustered. Yes, more or less. A hint of command entered Eleanor's voice. Then show me your skill. For the record, I like begonias. She walked past him. The man watched her leave. The man covered his face with one hand. The future empress likes begonias. He lowered his hand. A gleam shone in his eyes. That is an unexpected gain indeed. The insignia on his chest revealed his identity. Io Bastide, vice captain of the White Knight Order. The palace corridor was empty, magnificent yet silent. Eleanor stood alone by the window. Sunlight poured in. She murmured softly, begonias. In the garden of Snow Manor, begonias were always in bloom. A trace of sorrow crossed Eleanor's eyes. Will I ever see such a sight again? A knock came from outside the door. A voice called out, Lady Eleanor, there's a package for you. Eleanor turned toward the door. A package? A gloved hand. Eleanor looked down at the unfamiliar man on the floor. The emperor sent him quickly indeed. But it was strange. He had been covered in injuries, yet now he was completely healed. Eleanor's pupils narrowed. The emperor healed him. She looked at him from the side. As expected of him, a healing power that could only be used by the Delgado bloodline, chosen by the gods. No wonder the emperor could emerge unharmed from hordes of monsters. So he possesses healing power of this level. Eleanor's gaze turned cold. Oscar asked, have you settled your engagement? Oscar smiled faintly. I mean your fiancé, Duke Franklin Owen. Oscar, Taylor, one of Duke Horace's few close confidants. Eleanor looked at Oscar. He deliberately brought up my engagement. Is he testing me? Eleanor's fingers tightened. Eldrinville, Eric Altade, and my father. They were all my blood relatives. They all died in the schemes of Owen and Osborne. Eleanor suddenly stood up. Her skirt flared as she stared at Oscar. Do you think I still have any reason to maintain that engagement? Oscar's voice remained calm. I heard you and Duke Owen were close since childhood. We were once friends. Light reflected off Oscar's lenses. So it was an engagement without love? Eleanor lowered her eyes. A ruler must bear certain burdens. Back then, it was a decision for the territory. Since Franklin, Owen, and I were as close as you say, I once thought it was not a bad arrangement. But now all I feel for that former friend is hatred. Oscar's voice rang out. If you ascend to the seat of Empress, do you intend to take revenge on them? Eleanor's hand clenched sharply. Yes, that is exactly what I intend. Oscar fell silent for a moment. No matter which wound I touch, her expression does not change. That alone is enough to arouse His Majesty's interest. Oscar looked at Eleanor's back. What a bold woman. I have been. Oscar placed a hand over his chest. Terribly rude. Let us have another pleasant conversation next time. A faint smile touched Eleanor's lips. That was already very pleasant. Very much so. She folded her hands before her and stood quietly. Strange man lay on the bed with his eyes closed. Bronze skin, red hair. Is he from the kingdom of Sibrand? Eleanor's fingers lightly touched the stranger's chin. A black aura spread out. He is under very strong domination magic. Eleanor bent over him. Light blossomed from her hand and enveloped the stranger. A deep violet magical vortex formed. To cast mind control of this degree, Eleanor closed her eyes. The light intensified. Who exactly is the mastermind? The magical vortex exploded. The chain shattered with a sharp sound. The red-haired man jolted awake. He panted harshly. Eleanor withdrew her hand. Her expression was calm. The red-haired man suddenly sprang up. He stared wide-eyed at Eleanor. Eleanor lightly placed a hand on his chest. "I am Eleanor Snow, your new master." She asked softly, "What is your name?" The red-haired man remained silent, only staring at her. Eleanor smiled. "Your mind is very strong. The brainwashing has been undone. You can feel pain now, so you had better answer my question. Your name?" The red-haired man panted and answered, "Kalen." Eleanor lowered her eyes with a smile. "Kalen, what a beautiful name." She looked up at Kalen. "Do you remember anything else?" Kalen frowned deeply. Sweat slid down his face. "My memories are all vague. But one thing is clear." Kalen staggered back, a bloody dagger in his hand. At his feet lay his mother's corpse. "I killed my own mother with my own hands." His pupils widened in terror. A voice echoed in his mind. "Now, there is no one you cannot kill." A person wearing a fox mask gave orders in the dark. "The moment I command it, you must obey." The masked figure raised one finger. "Do you understand?" Kalen jolted back to himself, cold sweat pouring down. Eleanor observed him quietly. "It seems you remembered something." Eleanor's gaze was sharp. "Right now, there's only one thing I care about. Who ordered you to assassinate the Emperor?" Kalen raised his head. "If I tell you, can you let me live?" Eleanor smiled brilliantly, like a flower in bloom. Kalen slowly answered, "A woman. The most exalted woman in this palace at present. The Empress Dowager." A man with a small mustache bowed deeply. "Why is it taking so long? What happened?" "The assassination failed, and the assassin wasn't even masked?" The Empress Dowager smiled disdainfully. "I never expected it to succeed anyway. But if he talks under the Emperor's torture," the Empress Dowager gazed at the empty hall. "No one can break that brainwashing spell. Horace will find nothing." The Empress Dowager lifted her wine glass. "By the way, is everything prepared?" The mustache man answered yes. "Everything is ready." A cold smile spread across the Empress Dowager's lips. "That day is not far off. Soon I will never again hear that cursed word, mother." The doors of Lily Palace burst open as Calliope stormed in. Her face was flushed red, and she glared ahead. "Are you ignoring me too?" Eleanor's eyes were cold as she gave a contemptuous smile. "Do I need the Emperor's help to deal with a disgraced consort?" Those hands suddenly gripped the doorframe, knuckles turning white. "I'll make you pay for looking down on an imperial consort." Calliope announced loudly, "First consort, I have something important to discuss with you." Aurelia sat quietly, absorbed in reading a book, completely ignoring the disturbance outside. Aurelia called softly, "Calliope." She sat upright. "Aurelia Rogers, the first imperial consort of the palace." "So, second consort, are you proposing that we join hands to drive out the guest of Tulip Palace?" Calliope leaned forward, her tone urgent. "Exactly." Aurelia's eyes were calm. "Why would I do that?" Her lips moved in a silent counterquestion. Calliope's eyes widened. "Why? It's obvious she will become the next empress. We must get rid of her in advance. You should be the next empress." First consort Aurelia lifted her teacup, a dark look passing through her eyes as she took a sip. Aurelia spoke evenly. "Second consort, you seem to be mistaken about something. I have no desire for the seat of empress," she stated calmly, though her hand quietly clenched in her skirt. "That's right. I do not want to be empress. Calix Delgado, I only want to become that man's wife. That is her only obsession." Calliope was incredulous, but Aurelia looked directly at her. "His Majesty has already made our duty as empress clear. I only wish to obey His Majesty's command." "Isn't that how the second consort feels as well?" Calliope hurriedly waved her hands. "Oh no. Of course not. I only came to help the first consort." Aurelia smiled. "Since I do not need help, then this trip was wasted." Calliope turned away. "I understand." She let out a cold laugh. "What a joke. That sly fox. Do you think I don't know you truly love His Majesty? I'll take my leave. Just pretend you never heard what I said today." Calliope turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, Eleanor Snow. Have you seen her with your own eyes? She's astonishingly beautiful." Aurelia said nothing. "I'm certain His Majesty will be completely captivated by her," Calliope declared, not only as an emperor, but as a man. Aurelia suddenly snapped back to reality, her fingers tightening around the teacup. Calliope peeked through the door, a sly smile on her lips, then quietly slipped away. The door shut softly. Aurelia set down her teacup. The tea rippled in the cup, its surface reflecting her gloomy face. Eleanor Snow. Aurelia whispered the name. At Tulip Palace, a blond man stood at the door. He wore a splendid attendant's uniform and smiled politely. Io bastide. By His Majesty's command, I have come to serve Lady Eleanor, the honored guest of Tulip Palace. Eleanor sat quietly on the sofa. The moment she heard the voice, it sounded strangely familiar. She looked up and saw the man's face clearly. Oh, sorry. Eleanor froze. It was that gardener. The voice was exactly the same, but his appearance was completely different. Was it magic? Not just anyone could use that kind of magic. Io bod. Eleanor rose to her feet. I am Eleanor Snow. It is a pleasure to work with you. Mr. Bastide. Io smiled. Please just call me Io. Eleanor thought it through from beginning to end. The only reason for using magic like that was surveillance. His Majesty still doesn't trust me. Her gaze darkened. Beijing, Snow Manor. Snow covered the rooftops. Eagles flew past the snowy mountains, overlooking the tranquil town. Harvelian stood on the city wall, gazing into the distance. Thanks to His Majesty's messenger, the people of our territory are safe and sound. That's truly a relief. Children chased snowflakes through the streets. Harvelian stood against the wind when a voice called out, Brother, sister. She's safe, right? A blond young man approached. Aster Snow, the youngest son of the Snow family. Harvelian smiled. Of course, Eleanor is strong, unlike you. Wow, that's harsh, Aster said dramatically. Then you'd better work harder, little brother. A few white feathers drifted down as a carrier pigeon spread its wings and flew into the sky. The pigeon landed on Harvelian's shoulder. He looked into the distance, worry flickering in his eyes. Milk! He held out a hand, and the pigeon settled there. Looks like it's from Ellie. He carefully untied the letter and opened it. To my second brother and Aster, before summer arrives, I will become empress. The handwriting was firm. There may be assassination attempts. The forces behind the former empresses may turn their swords toward the Snow family, but I will do my best to delay them. I will never forgive Owen and Osborne. Snow's gaze turned cold as he read on. I believe our eldest brother feels the same. The first one we must strike down is Osborne. The Osborne territory relies on trade. Cut off his trade routes first. And then, Aster laughed softly. That really does sound like my sister. Even so far away, she's still planning everything. Eleanor's pen had paused over the page. Do not grieve over my departure. The imperial palace may be cold, but it is warmer than the north. Eleanor looked out the window. I will always find my own way to survive. Harvilian's eyes moved across the lines. She says that, but in a place where she has no one to rely on, it must be hard for her. Harvilian's fingers tightened, crumpling the paper. Standing in the snow, he murmured, Eleanor, I won't pity the choice you made because you do not need pity. Harvilian turned into the wind and snow. I will begin here and lay a carpet beneath the road you walk. He stared into the distance, his eyes filled with resolve and promise. Sunlight filtered through the leaves and fell over a grand estate. A teacup clinked softly. Eleanor sat on the sofa and lifted her cup with slow, elegant movements. Only 2 days remained until the New Year celebration. Calix's figure surfaced in her mind, arms folded across his chest, expression cold and forbidding. He had once warned her that someone would use the crowd at the festival as sacrifices to tear open a rift. Eleanor stared at the ripples in her tea. They seemed to believe me then, so why haven't they taken any precautions yet? Do they still not trust me? IO surveillance was waiting just outside the door. It seems I have no choice. Pushing herself up from the armrests, Eleanor rose abruptly. I must meet the Emperor directly and stop innocent civilians from being sacrificed. Footsteps sounded outside the door, steady and composed. A guard stopped at the entrance and announced loudly, My lady, His Majesty has come to visit you. Eleanor turned in surprise. Calix entered the room. A retainer followed behind him. Eleanor dipped into a slight curtsy. Your Majesty. Calix's eyes passed over her and fell into the shadowy corner of the room. The attendant's figure gradually became clear in the light. It was Kalen. The corner of Calix's mouth lifted. Impressive. You managed to break that man's brainwashing. Eleanor turned to him. He had pinpointed Kalen's hiding place exactly. Eleanor said, "His name is Kalen. The details are blurred because of the brainwashing, but he clearly remembers who gave the assassination order." Calix's eyes sharpened. "Is it the person I'm thinking of?" Eleanor sat back down on the sofa. "Yes." Folding her hands together, she added, "Your Majesty, for now, we must not touch that person." Calix looked at her. "Why?" A shadow crossed Eleanor's eyes. "The power behind him is too strong. Even if someone is arrested now, we still can't bring them down." Calix's expression turned cold. "True. Even after I cut off the prince's head, nothing came of it." Eleanor changed her tone. "Then let us cut off his right arm first." A flicker of golden light flashed through Calix's eyes, and his gaze sharpened. "You mean his adjutant, Henga Igler?" Apparently, he already knew Henga was the Empress's strategist. Eleanor said, "Kalen will speak that name." Calix continued, "If Henga Igler's name comes from the mouth of an assassin who attempted regicide, the Empress will no longer be able to shield him." Eleanor's gaze turned firm. "And if something happens during the celebration, we can place the blame on Henga. As for how, I will create the evidence." Calix fell silent for a moment. Eleanor immediately asked, "Was my suggestion too extreme?" Calix shook his head slightly. "No, it's exactly right." He extended a hand. "Come out of the palace with me now." Eleanor blinked. "Leave the palace?" Calix turned away. "If the enemy hears that I am leisurely enjoying a date with a lady, they will assume I know nothing." Eleanor nodded in agreement. "That is true." Calix thought for a moment. "If I leave the palace with you, those targeting you will become restless. Are you all right with that?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "Perfect. I get lonely easily. I've been craving a little attention." The streets were crowded with people. In the bright sunlight, a magnificent carriage stopped. Eleanor extended her hand and lightly placed it in Calix's. Holding Eleanor's hand, Calix led her toward the carriage under everyone's watchful eyes. The crowd stirred. "Is that His Majesty the Emperor?" Calix and Eleanor stood side by side. People dropped to their knees one after another. "We greet the Emperor of the Empire." Eleanor thought, as expected, just seeing him makes people panic. After all, he has been shaped into the bloodthirsty emperor who murdered 3 empresses. The image of Calix stood amid bloodshed. It was an image deliberately twisted. Eleanor looked at his resolute profile. The crown princess truly has complete control of public opinion. An emperor who conquered battlefields should be praised, not slandered like this. A smile played at Calix's lips. "All right," he stepped forward. "Then let's begin." They entered a luxurious dress shop. The interior glittered with gold. Jewels sparkled on the dressing table, and gowns of every kind hung from the racks. Calix sat on a sofa, flipping through a catalog. He waited leisurely as the curtain was pulled aside. Eleanor appeared before him in a purple gown. The skirt spread around her like a galaxy, shimmering with violet light. Calix's gaze froze. He brushed his lower lip with his hand, a trace of admiration flashing in his eyes. In a low voice, he praised her. "You're dazzling." Eleanor turned, her skirt swaying with the motion. "Am I pretty?" Calix's gaze followed her. He touched his cravat, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly. He spoke again, voice low and certain. "You are very beautiful." 2 maids whispered in the distance, their cheeks flushed red. Eleanor closed her eyes, the corners of her mouth lifting into a confident smile. Sunlight streamed through the leaves onto the grand palace. Calliope looked agitated. "Nonsense. A date? His Majesty the Emperor actually went on a date," a maid reported in a low voice. "I heard it myself. Eleanor Snow has gone out on a date with His Majesty." Calliope clutched at her hair. No. His Majesty is not the sort of man who goes on dates." Then she suddenly jolted upright, eyes wide. "No, this isn't the time to get worked up. I have to seize this chance." Her eyes sharpened. "So, Tulip Palace is empty right now?" The maid answered at once. "Yes." Footsteps rang out, quick and decisive. She opened a drawer and took out a small green bottle. Cecile looked tense. Calliope held it out to her. "Take this." A malicious gleam shone in Calliope's eyes. "Put this into Eleanor Snow's skin lotion." A cold smile spread across her face, full of calculation. Trembling, Cecile accepted the bottle. "What is this?" Calliope sneered. a poison that ruins the skin. Cecile's pupils shrank. Her lips parted, but no words came. Calliope laced her fingers together, eyes fever-bright. Doesn't it excite you? To see that beautiful face of Eleanor's completely fall apart. Throwing back her head, Calliope burst into laughter. Beside her, Cecile stared at the poisoned bottle in horror. Dusk began to fall. Lights flickered on. Eleanor stood with her hands folded before her, looking awkwardly restrained. Calix and Eleanor walked side by side along a stone path, keeping a distance between them. Eleanor's fingers fidgeted uneasily. Her heart pounded. Calix turned his face toward her. "You've taken quite a few things from me." Eleanor lowered her eyes. "A few clothes, that's all. Surely that doesn't damage your Majesty's dignity." A cold smile tugged at Calix's lips, though his eyes were icy. The onlooking townspeople whispered among themselves in astonishment. Looking down at Eleanor, Calix said, "The rumor that the Emperor is dating a woman will spread quickly, and the rumors about you will become true as well. Does that not bother you?" Eleanor lifted her face, gaze unwavering. "That is exactly what I want." Calix raised a brow. "Why?" Eleanor looked past him toward the dimly lit buildings in the distance. "People make mistakes when they are anxious. I only hope our enemies do not have enough patience." Calix smiled meaningfully. "I am curious. How did Count Snow raise you?" Eleanor answered calmly, "My father taught me never to entrust my life to others." Calix's gaze fell on her. "That is good advice. No one taught me that. I had to learn it on my own." His hand suddenly slipped around Eleanor's waist and pulled her close. Eleanor stiffened, staring at him in shock. Calix lowered his gaze to her, his tone tinged with mockery. "I imagine that is why you are so graceful and refined." A faint smile touched Eleanor's lips. "I am curious," she said, "but I do not doubt you." Calix fell silent, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Have you noticed the road we're taking?" Eleanor's eyes swept over the stone path beneath them. "Yes. This seems to be the most crowded area." Calix kept walking. "Exactly. If they intend to make a move, this is the best place." As we walked, I placed magic stones to form a barrier. A blue crystal floated in the air, glimmering faintly. 37 in total. Calix looked at her. "Just as I thought, you came prepared. That's why you chose the square. If anything happens, the people can be evacuated safely with the right guidance." Eleanor lowered her gaze. "We need knights to guide them, but there may be spies among them, so we cannot issue direct orders ourselves." Calix looked at her profile. "She knows exactly what I'm worried about. A woman like you keeps surprising me." Eleanor said softly, "Don't tell anyone. I'll handle it." Calix straightened. "What?" Eleanor remained calm. "I alone am enough. From tomorrow until the celebration ends, I'll come here every day to prepare." Calix scoffed. "You alone are enough? Are you joking?" Eleanor did not retreat. "Your Majesty, I am serious. Is a woman chosen to become the fourth empress incapable of even this?" Calix's gaze moved past her to the evening glow in the distance. "I have never expected this much from an empress." Eleanor lifted her chin. "Then watch. The fourth empress will accomplish what you never expected." Her silver hair streamed in the wind, her skirt sparkling with light, radiant with confidence. Calix stared at her. His expression was complicated. He raised a hand and gently touched her cheek and hair. Calix's fingertips brushed Eleanor's cheek, then tucked a strand of silver hair behind her ear. Eleanor's breathing caught. Inwardly, Calix thought, "What did I just do?" Dusk settled over the square. The two stood in the fading light. Calix's fingers lingered in Eleanor's hair as he murmured, "Winter in the capital is warm." His hand slowly fell away, withdrawing as though burned by flame. Eleanor closed her eyes. A faint smile curved her lips. "Your Majesty." The palace lanterns glowed in the night, warm as spring. Kalen sat alone in the corner of an empty room, leaning against a translucent curtain. He lowered his head in thought. "Should I run?" "No one is around right now." Kalen looked up at Eleanor across from him. "I already told you who ordered the assassination. Will you let me live now?" Eleanor looked at him calmly. "I keep my promises." Kalen's eyes turned urgent. "Then let me go." Eleanor replied evenly. "Where would you go?" Anywhere, Kalen answered. Somewhere I can be free. Eleanor gently touched Kalen's hair. Freedom? If someone who has spent his whole life being raised as an assassin were given freedom, what would he do? Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Most likely, he would go on assassinating people. A person can only do what they know. Is that the freedom you want? Kalen had no answer. Eleanor's gaze passed through the window and settled on the birds perched on the branches. Since I spared you, stay by my side. Serve me faithfully. Learn things other than killing. Eleanor turned back to look at him. Go discover how beautiful this world is. And in such a world, what can you do? When that day comes, I will give you true freedom. True freedom. Kalen murmured. Light flickered in his eyes. He suddenly raised his head. His eyes were resolute. I understand. The lock clicked softly. Cecile entered the room with a tense expression. Kalen watched her in confusion from behind the curtain. Cecile turned toward the dressing table and picked up a bottle of green liquid. She unscrewed the cap and poured the glowing green poison, drop by drop, into another bottle. The green liquid mixed with the original pink fluid inside and gave off an ominous glow. Kalen suddenly realized what was happening. His pupils contracted. Cecile picked up the bottle and shook it, then placed it back on the dressing table. She turned and left the room. The door shut softly behind her. From behind the curtain, Kalen stuck his head out. Someone poisoned the beauty. His eyes were indifferent. It has nothing to do with me. He turned to leave, but his gaze was drawn back to the bottle. Eleanor pushed the door open and entered, heading toward the dressing table. Kalen whipped around. Eleanor pressed a hand to her chest. Is everything all right? Kalen stood in the shadows. Everything's fine. Eleanor looked at him in silence, her eyes full of caution. Cecile came in pushing a meal cart, head lowered. I've prepared the food. She passed by with the cart. Kalen's eyes sharpened. Eleanor watched Cecile's back. Pointing to the dishes spread across the table, Eleanor said, Kalen, come eat. Kalen's cheeks reddened slightly. Turning his head away, he asked, Madam, aren't you eating? Already ate outside. This was prepared especially for you. Kalen picked up a meat pie and took a huge bite. He chewed with both cheeks puffed out. Looks like meat pies are your favorite. Eleanor folded her hands, wearing a gentle smile. Kalen said, meat pies are delicious. Eleanor explained, the venison pies made in snow territory are the most famous. In the dead of winter, when you hold a meat pie in frozen hands and take a bite, it feels like you own the whole world. Eleanor sank into the memory, a happy smile appearing on her face. I miss those days. Kalen ate silently, then paused and looked at her. Eleanor came back to herself and smiled at him. Someday, let's go to snow territory and eat them together. She closed her eyes, a trace of longing on her lips. Kalen lowered his gaze. Just now, Cecile put something in your toner. Eleanor listened quietly. The moment he finished speaking, she smiled. I understand. Thank you for telling me. Rose Palace, residence of the second imperial consort. Music drifted out from the window. Calliope sat before the mirror, carefully dressing herself, humming a tune. She was in high spirits. After today, I'll never have to see that face again. Calliope picked up her own toner. It's about time to wash up too. Too bad I won't get to watch her pat it onto her face. She let out a soft laugh. Once her face looks like that, she'll never leave Tulip Palace again. Suddenly, a sharp pain struck. Why does my face hurt so much? She lunged for the mirror and let out a scream. Her reflection was covered in red rashes, horribly ulcerated. What? What is this? Why is this happening? What? Calliope trembled. Why is there poison in my toner? Her pupils contracted. Did Cecile betray me? How dare she? She smashed the mirror to pieces. Shards flew everywhere. Calliope's face twisted, her eyes bloodshot. Cecile. Eleanor. Snow, I will never forgive you. Lily Palace, residence of the first imperial consort. Aurelia stood by the window. Eleanor's maid put poison in Calliope's toner? She really is bold. Eleanor Snow. Aurelia clenched her fists, her expression dark. She demanded of the maid, why did she come alone? Where is Eleanor Snow? The maid lowered her head. She has gone out to buy a dress and won't be back until tonight. Aurelia stepped closer. I summoned her, and that was her reply? What exactly did she say? The maid stammered, well. Aurelia cut her off impatiently. Never mind. Tell me her exact words. The maid covered her mouth, remembering Eleanor's words. She said, she didn't have to come just because she was summoned. If there was business, her mistress should come in person. Aurelia let out a cold laugh. Her smile twisted, her eyes going rigid. I'll make her understand how ridiculous it is to protect her pride like that. Turning to the side, she said coldly, report to me the moment she returns. Sunlight flooded the street. Eleanor walked through it in men's clothing, the brim of her hat pulled low. She lifted a hand to adjust it, her violet eyes sharp as blades. Calix and Eleanor walked side by side. Starting tomorrow, I'll also join the monster subjugation team. Eleanor asked, shall we prepare together? Calix gave a slight wave of his hand. Yes. Eleanor stared at him. Is it concern or suspicion, or both? But if you come every day, the enemy will notice. Calix replied firmly, don't worry. That won't happen. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I'll wait for you at that tea house. Even in men's clothes, and with her hat pulled low, Eleanor still felt uneasy. Your Majesty, what are you doing? Everyone knows your face, and you still want to scout the place personally. The tea house was empty. Has he not arrived yet? Eleanor looked toward the door. A red-haired man stood there. Could it be? The red-haired man turned. His ear twitched. Calix looked back. Their eyes met, and the air seemed to freeze. Eleanor cried out in shock, Your Majesty. In a bright reception room, Calix and Eleanor sat across a round table from each other. The atmosphere was quiet. A faint smile touched Calix's lips. So you could be surprised after all. Eleanor leaned forward, both hands braced on the table. It's only up close that I can tell it's you, Your Majesty. She lifted her head and looked straight at the man opposite her. But from a distance, with your hair color and eye color changed, I wouldn't have recognized you at all. Calix leaned forward until his gaze met Eleanor's. That's right. It's the method I often use when going incognito. Eleanor fell thoughtful. And Sir Io Bastide. That changed his entire face directly. Your Majesty, is your technique a little inferior to Sir Io's? An invisible pressure settled over Calix, and his eyes turned suddenly cold. How does she know Io can use transformation magic? Resting a hand against his forehead, Calix let out a short huff. You really are good at using an innocent face to say outrageous things. Eleanor replied calmly. If I was rude, then I apologize. But Eleanor lowered her gaze. Sir Io's transformation magic was flawless. I only asked out of simple curiosity. Calix ran a hand through his hair. How does she know I use transformation magic? Eleanor recalled the suspicious gardener wandering near Tulip Palace, followed by a guard knight with a different appearance but exactly the same voice. Calix folded his hands and leaned forward. So you recognized him by voice alone? Eleanor answered openly, yes. Is that strange? Calix's expression froze. Of course it is. Only I knew Io could use transformation magic. Now, two people know. If his ability is exposed, it's dangerous. A murderous glint flashed in Calix's eyes. Should I get rid of her? But why don't I want to kill her? Eleanor stared at Calix. Shouldn't I want to know? Leaning forward, Eleanor asked softly, what kind of magic is it? Could you tell me just a little? Calix's heart stirred. Why would I tell this woman everything about an ability even Oscar doesn't know of? Eleanor's fingertips lightly touched the corner of her eye. Please, just the name of the magic is enough. Calix looked into Eleanor's eyes. Is it because I want to keep looking at them? Her violet eyes shone with pure curiosity, not a trace of ulterior motive. Those eyes, glowing with violet light, unsettled him. Calix suddenly withdrew his hand. To let down my guard so easily because of those eyes, this isn't like me. Calix returned to his usual coldness. I have no intention of telling you. Even if I did, it would be of no use to you. Eleanor's eyes dimmed at once. Then, Eleanor leaned in again, her tone almost coaxing. Why not tell me first, and then decide whether it would be useful? In that moment, she seemed like a child acting spoiled. A faint smile appeared on Calix's lips as he abruptly changed the subject. Have you eaten breakfast? Eleanor frowned slightly. You're changing the subject. Is it because this magic can't be told to anyone? Calix answered calmly, yes. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. But you still showed it to me. Were you testing whether I can keep a secret? Calix admitted, yes. I'm watching to see how long you can keep it. Eleanor leaned closer. My mouth will only open in front of your majesty. Calix raised a brow. Meaning you'll keep pestering me until I tell you the truth of this power? Eleanor gave a sly smile, as perceptive as ever. Calix covered his eyes with one hand and let out a soft laugh. He was thoroughly amused. Looking at Eleanor, he said, Snow Duchy must hold a celebration at this time of year too, doesn't it? Resting her chin on her hands, Eleanor answered, yes. During the New Year celebration, there's always a lot of snow, so people make snow sculptures. She continued, they gather snow, dye it with colors, and shape it. There's also a ritual where they throw snow in the direction of Mount Arlen. Curious, Calix asked, why do they do that? Through the window, the distant snowy mountains came into view. To make a wish to Mount Arlen, Eleanor said. To pray that the monsters won't come down from the mountain that year. Her thoughts drifted far away. When countless colored snowballs fly into the sky at once, it looks like 10,000 flowers blooming in winter. It's truly beautiful. Calix's gaze deepened. That trial is too cruel. Eleanor came back to herself. What? Calix looked at her. For a woman who can see flowers in the snow, the fate of being destroyed is too cruel. A trace of confusion flashed in Eleanor's eyes. With such a calm face and steady voice, he had said something like that. The warmth in his words was enough to melt ice and snow. Eleanor's cheeks reddened slightly. So this is who you are. Calix. In the Empress Dowager's palace, an attendant reported. His Majesty is currently in the Imperial Palace. The attendant continued. The elders will arrive tomorrow. The people of the Empire are busy preparing for tomorrow's celebration. Stephanie took a refined sip of tea. Is that so? Everything is proceeding according to plan. A glint flashed in her eyes. Too perfectly. Which is exactly why I'm uneasy. Sitting upright, Stephanie said, we must move the plan forward. She rose abruptly, eyes resolute. Not tomorrow. Today. Right now. A cold smile curved Stephanie's lips. The celebration will be canceled. Sunlight bathed the bustling town square. People moved among the stalls, preparing for the coming festival. Beneath the peaceful atmosphere, dark currents were stirring. Sunlight fell over a magnificent estate, an isolated palace. Stephanie sat alone by the window, her back nearly swallowed by the morning light. She turned her face, expression icy. Delgado, that nauseating bloodline. I never imagined it would be so stubborn. I should never have let him be born. Stephanie clenched her teeth, her face twisted with terror. If this plan fails, Father will never forgive me. If Father abandons me, he'll seize on that weakness and cut off my limbs. Stephanie's face warped with rage. That bastard wouldn't dare kill me only because of my father's authority. She turned toward the window. In that case, her eyes turned cold, and she swung her arm sharply. A ruthless glint flashed in Stephanie's eyes. A green snake slid across the cold floor. It slipped through the crack beneath the door and vanished into the darkness. Shadows cloaked a secret chamber where several cloaked figures stood around a glowing magic circle. One cloaked figure spoke in a hoarse voice. The Duke of Wilget's daughter. Another replied, do not underestimate your enemy. At the center of the magic circle lay a red gemstone. Black thorn-like energy coiled around it. The gem seeped a blood-like liquid, staining the ancient runes red. One cloaked figure extended a hand, controlling that sinister power. His voice echoed through the chamber. We must drive him completely to collapse. The cloaked man's face twisted in the shadows. Blood seeped from the corners of his eyes and mouth as he endured tremendous pain. Red energy suddenly exploded, swallowing everything. The sky above the capital remained bright and clear, as if nothing had happened. The square was full of people. Calix and Eleanor walked side by side. Eleanor kept the brim of her hat low. It seemed no one recognized her. In many ways, that was something to envy. How can I find out about that technique? Or would it be easier to deal with Io Basti directly? Calix noticed her stare. If you could stop looking at my face so much, I'd appreciate it. Eleanor smiled faintly. You're simply too dazzling. I can't look away. Calix let out an amused laugh. Then suddenly a scream split the square. The crowd panicked. What's happening? Calix and Eleanor looked toward the crowd. Calix frowned in confusion. What happened? The people were packed too tightly to see anything. In that case, Eleanor closed her eyes. A powerful surge of energy burst from beneath her feet. Blue-white light flared. Winter-like energy swept outward, shoving the crowd aside and creating a huge empty space. People staggered under the fierce wind. One citizen shouted in terror. Where did this wind come from? The people struggled in the magical storm, screams rising everywhere. A pillar of energy shot into the sky and tore open a gash at the center of the square. Eleanor and Calix landed steadily on the ground. Waves of power swept across the earth, kicking up dust and rubble. Calix stared at the scene in astonishment. The magical afterwaves swirled around him. Just as I thought. You're even stronger than I expected. Eleanor smiled faintly, magic flowing around her fingertips. So should you stay on guard? Calix curled his lips. A little. He stared at Eleanor, his gaze growing deeper. Suddenly, a tremendous crash tore through the sky. A citizen looked up in terror. What is that? Eleanor and Calix turned at once toward the source of the chaos. Eleanor's expression froze instantly. In the sky, a gigantic black vortex was forming. Red lightning rolled within it, radiating an ominous presence. Eleanor looked upward. Inside the red energy whirlpool, a black object was falling. What is that? Calix and Eleanor rushed toward the center of the square at the same time. Their footsteps were urgent. Black energy descended like tentacles and wrapped around Eleanor. She let out a muffled groan. A blinding red pillar of light crashed down from the sky, and the explosion of energy swallowed her figure. The red force burst in midair, and black thorns shot violently out from within it. Eleanor staggered back under the impact. She looked up at the crack in the sky, then at that ominous vortex, her pupils shrinking. It was blood sacrifice. A crimson beam shot upward. One man was swallowed by the light and screamed. Another reached out in terror. Save me. He too was devoured by the beam. A blue ring of light suddenly spread outward, driving back the crimson glow. Eleanor stood at the center of the radiance. The crowd was lifted into the air by the blue light, staring down in shock. Blue currents swirled around Eleanor, gently lowering the floating people back down. She pulled her hat lower. There are too many people. My magic has limits. If this goes on. Eleanor's pupils contracted. Anyone who can move, get up. Calix's voice rang out behind her. If you don't want to die, get up now. Eleanor looked exhausted. She returned to her true appearance in order to draw attention. Cries broke out among the crowd. His Majesty, the Emperor is here. He came to save us himself. Calix stood among the crowd, shouting orders. Quickly, hide, move. People began to run, obeying his command. Run, hurry. Eleanor watched the evacuating crowd. Thanks to the Emperor, they're retreating now. It's our turn to stop the rift. Eleanor gathered magic in both hands, blue light blazing before her. But the power of wind alone won't be enough. Calix murmured, freeze. A torrent of freezing air burst from beside him and instantly sealed the edge of the rift in ice. A giant claw stretched out from within and easily shattered the ice. The rift continued expanding outward. Then a massive purple magic sword plunged from the sky, stabbing fiercely into it with destructive force. The magic sword pierced the rift. The blade hummed as immense power surged from it. Eleanor looked up in shock at the familiar sword. That was the Emperor's weapon. The Emperor had acted. Calix lightly touched the brim of Eleanor's hat. You stopped the rift from expanding perfectly. Eleanor looked up at him. Only because of your Majesty's help. Calix withdrew his hand. Only froze it temporarily. Without your wind suppressing the rift, it would have expanded again long ago. It was all thanks to you. Eleanor looked at Calix. Only bought some time. The rift will eventually open again. Calix's eyes were steady. My knights will arrive soon. Eleanor answered urgently, I'll help. Calix refused. No, you should return to the palace. Eleanor hesitated. But Calix reached out and pressed down the brim of her hat. You've already done enough. My knights will recognize you. He looked at Eleanor. The fact that you possess this kind of power is something I'd better keep for now. Eleanor lowered her head. Understood. She stepped back. Was it my imagination? Or did he notice? Calix turned and left, his voice drifting back. Be careful. Eleanor watched his back. I can't read his thoughts at all. Is he worried about me? Eleanor looked up, lips parting. Is he worried about me? Calix stopped walking. Yes. A faint smile touched Eleanor's lips. He really is worried about me. Calix looked at her with a gaze both complicated and gentle. In the distance, the rift burst again with ominous red light. Eleanor quietly returned to the palace, walking alone down the empty corridor. Two maids were talking in the distance. What was that in the sky just now? All the knights ran out. Did something happen in the square? The other replied, Isn't the emperor in the palace right now? No, I saw him here when I arrived. Eleanor hid behind the door and listened. How could the emperor be in the palace? He should be in the square. Eleanor's eyes widened in shock. That was the emperor himself, not her imagination. Realization struck. Bastide had disguised himself as the emperor. That was why the enemy believed the emperor was still in the palace and chose to move in the square. If the rift had not been dealt with and the emperor had been inside the palace, he would never have escaped blame. It would have given the enemy an excuse to overthrow him. Today the square had been packed with people. If the rift had run out of control and monsters had poured through, the dead and wounded would have numbered in the hundreds or thousands. Eleanor's eyes went cold. All of this, merely to replace the emperor. She stood before Grandor, but their plan had failed. She grasped the handle and pushed the door open. The rift in the capital had been stopped perfectly by the emperor. His prestige would only rise higher. Fury burned in Eleanor's violet eyes. Her gaze darkened. Cecile's silhouette came into view. In an icy voice, Eleanor asked, What are you doing? Cecile's body jolted. She stumbled backward, her footing slipping. She lost her balance and fell hard to the floor. Looking up in terror, Cecile stammered, that. Eleanor's voice sounded again. Cecile. Her eyes darkened. She must have come on Calliope's orders to hide the poison. Rumors were already spreading through the palace that I poisoned Calliope's toner. They need to fabricate hard evidence. Then I'll play along and pretend I know nothing. Eleanor put on a gentle expression. I startled you by coming in so suddenly, didn't I? Were you tidying the clothes? Cecile forced herself to stay calm. Yes. Eleanor extended a hand. You've worked hard. Get up. With Eleanor's help, Cecile stood. A flicker of relief crossed her face. Yes, then I'll. Cecile hurriedly curtsied, then turned and nearly fled. Her footsteps echoed down the corridor. She pressed herself against the wall, gasping. That was close. If Eleanor had caught me, what would have happened? That woman would kill me. Pressing a hand to her chest, Cecile muttered, I hit it well. Calliope's voice sounded. Did you? Cecile spun around in fear. Lady Calliope. Looking down at her, Calliope said, Let's go see His Majesty. Cecile trembled all over. A cold light gleamed in Calliope's eyes. After all, the bigger the scene, the better. Cecile's pupils shrank, fear choking her. Calix walked down the palace corridor with steady steps. He lifted a hand and touched his cheek, lost in thought. A faint light shimmered at Io's fingertips as his thoughts raced. The Emperor's judgment was correct. The knights all rushed to the square. Something must have happened there. I wonder whether His Majesty is safe. Io looked toward the door. He ordered everyone to remain inside the palace. I can't go out and check. Io suddenly turned back. Footsteps approached. Aurelia and Calliope were coming. A crowd followed behind them. Io was puzzled. What happened? Why are so many people gathering at Tulip Palace? Io planted his feet. What is the matter? Aurelia moved to pass him. Step aside. I have business with Lady Eleanor. Io blocked her path. His Majesty gave orders. Lady Eleanor is to be protected. You may not enter without permission. But a cold smile curled at Aurelia's lips. His Majesty would not order a criminal protected. Would he? Calliope covered her face with both hands, her voice trembling. I truly don't understand why Lady Eleanor would do this to me. He suddenly spread his hands wide, revealing his twisted face. How could someone with a face like that go on living? Aurelia understood at once, her eyes turning cold. Resting his chin on one hand, his gaze swept over the crowd. I cannot act on mere rumors. Miss Eleanor caused a disturbance in the imperial palace, Calliope thought. Thanks to the foolish first imperial consort trusting me so blindly, things have blown up this far. Now Eleanor Snow can only be driven out. Io Bastide questioned the accused. Aurelia shot back at Io. Do you even know what kind of woman you're protecting? Io turned his face slightly. I have no interest in listening to gossip spread by chattering women. Aurelia bristled with anger. How rude. Do you not know who I am? Io leaned down, closing in. Of course I do. I know perfectly well. Aurelia faltered under his pressure. She took a step back, but Io did not yield. Then footsteps approached from afar. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, and the murmuring crowd stirred. Why is it so noisy here? Calliope pointed at Eleanor and sharply accused her. Miss Eleanor, you had your maid poison my toner. Eleanor raised a hand to her lips, feigning surprise. Oh my, did I do such a thing? Really? Beneath her veil, Calliope's lips trembled. I. Aurelia spoke with false concern. I do not wish to doubt Miss Eleanor, but rumors are spreading all through the palace. With a hand to her chest, she introduced herself. I am Aurelia, the first imperial consort. Eleanor gave her a gentle smile. Yes, I know. Aurelia's eyes hardened. I am an imperial consort. Yet she is not surprised at all. Eleanor folded her hands and asked in return, how can you be certain I poisoned your toner? Aurelia's gaze was steady. We must search Miss Eleanor's person and room. If there is poison, there must be evidence. Eleanor smiled and nodded. Good idea. But Eleanor's lips curved upward. The search must include the second imperial consort as well. And the first imperial consort, too. Eleanor's gaze finally settled on Cecile, and that maid as well. Cecile went pale. Standing among them all, Eleanor swept her eyes over every noble present. She spoke calmly. Search everyone's person and rooms. Calliope spun around, aghast. What nonsense are you saying? Eleanor placed a hand on her chest, utterly composed. Since you are all judging me based only on rumors, I am willing to reveal the truth once and for all. Aurelia looked displeased. I agree, but why should we be searched? The corners of Eleanor's lips lifted slightly. If you think just a little, isn't the reason obvious? For example, the second imperial consort may have poisoned her own cosmetic water and then tried to frame Eleanor. Calliope snapped back shrilly. I'd have to be insane to do such a thing. Aurelia's gaze turned cold. That is absurd. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. Or perhaps Eleanor, who only needed to wait quietly to be made empress, suddenly went mad and poisoned an imperial consort. Calliope was startled. Eleanor turned to the crowd. Since His Majesty personally brought me to the bathhouse, I have a suggestion. If everyone agrees to be searched and submits willingly, then afterward the servants can search the rooms. Io crossed his arms and analyzed the situation calmly. The second imperial consort is desperate enough that she probably hid the poison in Eleanor's room. And Eleanor's attitude suggests she has already returned the poison to its rightful owner. But how did she manage it? Miss Snow was with His Majesty the whole time. Could she have used that assassin? Io's thoughts were interrupted by a cry of alarm. It came from the second imperial consort's side. A shrill scream. Calliope seized the maid's wrist tightly. In the maid's hand was a small vial. This is wrong. Why is that here? Get back to me. Eleanor's hand shot out and clamped down on Calliope's wrist. She stopped her. Gripping Calliope's hand, she yanked hard. Let go of me. Calliope cried out in pain. She stared at Eleanor in shock. How could a woman have such strength? The maid raised the small bottle in her hand, her voice trembling. This was found in the second imperial consort's skirt. Calliope screamed in panic. No, that's not mine. From within the crowd, Io watched coldly. Idiot, you should have pretended not to know what it was. Such a violent reaction only proves you knew full well it was poison. Eleanor soothed Calliope. Please calm down, second imperial consort. Io watched the scene unfold. Even amid this chaos, she was still looking after the second imperial consort. Her real aim was. A smile tugged at Io's lips. She really is level-headed. Even in a situation like this, she's raising her own standing. His Majesty seems to have fallen for a rather formidable woman. Now, this is getting interesting. Calliope's face beneath the veil was filled with despair. No, this can't be true. I have no idea what that is. Why would it be hidden in my clothes? She turned to Aurelia for help. First imperial consort, say something. Aurelia folded her hands before her. What could I possibly say? I merely followed the second imperial consort's arrangements, and in the end, innocent Miss Eleanor was dragged into this. She turned to Eleanor. Miss Eleanor, I am sorry matters turned out this way. Eleanor replied calmly, it's fine. Very well. Since you've apologized, I'll accept it. Aurelia's eyes darkened. She's smiling. yet speaking to me in such a condescending tone. How irritating. First imperial consort. Calliope grabbed Aurelia's shoulders. How can you treat me like this? Aurelia shook off her hand. I should be asking you that. How could you do such a thing? You poisoned your own cosmetic water to frame Miss Eleanor. Calliope screamed. Am I crazy? Why would I do that? I did not poison my own cosmetic water. If I tell the truth, that would mean admitting I ordered Cecile to poison Eleanor's cosmetic water. Aurelia crossed her arms. In any case, the second imperial consort has caused such a great disturbance in the royal household. We cannot overlook this. I will report it to His Majesty. Heavy footsteps sounded. A voice cut through the uproar. That won't be necessary. Everyone turned toward the door in alarm. Your Majesty. His Majesty, Calix, walked into the hall. His shirt was splattered with blood. He strode forward. Outside, corpses lie everywhere, and in here you're putting on quite a show. Calix came to stand beside Eleanor, as Io reported. I heard there were rumors that Miss Eleanor poisoned the second imperial consort's cosmetic water, which is why this search was conducted. But the poison was found on the second imperial consort herself. Calliope threw herself at Calix's feet. It isn't mine, Your Majesty. I was framed. She looked up at Calix, tears streaming down her face. Look at my face, Your Majesty. What woman would ruin her own face just to frame someone else? I am the victim. Someone harmed me. Calix spoke evenly. I only investigated this matter because those rumors were irritating. Calix looked down at Calliope on the floor, his voice cold. It doesn't matter. Calliope froze. What? I said it doesn't matter who hid the poison. Calliope's eyes filled with disbelief. How can you be so heartless? I'm the one whose face was ruined. She pointed at Eleanor. I'm the victim, not her. Calix lightly touched Eleanor's hair, drawing her behind him with undisguised possessiveness. Calix addressed the crowd. Since all of you seem so interested in this woman, let me make this clear. From this moment on, the woman by my side, Eleanor, Snow, shall become. Calix's voice echoed through the hall. My empress. The crowd stirred. The nobles all stepped back. Calix's eyes were icy. Any act directed at my partner is an act directed at me. To attack my partner is to attack me. Whether it was put into the second imperial consort's cosmetic water or mixed into the food and drink she consumed, does that really matter? At his words, Calliope's body jolted, her eyes filling with terror. Calix turned to Eleanor, his voice merciless. If the imperial palace stirs again over such foolish matters, the one responsible will be severely punished. Eleanor listened quietly. My husband is even more shameless than I imagined. Calix's gaze shifted to Calliope. As for the second imperial consort, Rose Palace will be sealed off for 2 months. Not even a single strand of your red hair had better appear outside its walls. Calliope burst into tears. Your Majesty, surely you didn't poison yourself. There must have been a servant helping you. Who was it? Calix's gaze was ice cold. Kill her. Cecile dropped to her knees and began frantically knocking her head against the floor. Spare me, Your Majesty. Please spare my life. I won't dare do it again. Please. A hand caught Calix's wrist. Eleanor looked him straight in the eye. I will take responsibility for that servant. Please allow it. Cecile and Aurelia stared in shock. Calix tilted his head toward Eleanor. You really do like picking up trash. Eleanor smiled faintly. If the palace can remain quiet inside and out, wouldn't that please Your Majesty even more? The palace fell silent. In the still palace, the morning light was faint. Cecile knelt before Eleanor. I committed a capital crime against the future empress. Eleanor stood with her back to her. Then go die. Cecile's body shook, her pupils shrinking. Why won't you die? Trembling, Cecile answered, yes. Future empress. Eleanor closed her eyes. You don't want to die, do you? Because you feel wronged. You're only a powerless servant, obeying the second imperial consort's orders. Cecile's eyes widened. She bent forward and knocked her head to the floor. Yes, future empress. I don't want to die. It's too unfair. Eleanor looked down at the maid prostrating herself. Good. If you want to work under me, you must be honest. You must never hide anything from me. Do you understand? Wiping away her tears, Cecile answered, yes. I would do my best. Thank you for sparing my life. Eleanor's tone turned cold. From now on, you're never to enter or leave Rose Palace again. And what was heard here today must not leave this room, not a single word. Cecile's eyes widened in fear. Yes, I will never again obey the Second Imperial Consort's orders. I will be loyal only to you. Eleanor picked up her teacup. I do not trust you. Right now, I have no reason to trust you. From now on, you must give me a reason to. Cecile lowered her head. Yes, I understand, future Empress. Eleanor set down the teacup. Good, you may leave now. Kaylin's voice rang out. I never thought you would spare that woman's life. Eleanor's expression remained calm. I only kill those who truly deserve to die. She has not reached that point. Kaylin asked in return, is that so? But you hid the poison for the Second Imperial Consort, not for Cecile. In the dim room, Cecile knelt on the floor. Kaylin turned and walked away, leaving only Cecile's despairing figure behind. I feel sorry for her, Eleanor murmured. How pitiful. Kaylin looked at Eleanor. In the end, she was only following orders. Eleanor's hand lightly stroked Kaylin's hair. You've learned something now. Mercy. A trace of confusion flickered in Kaylin's eyes. Eleanor smiled and asked, do you remember I told you I wanted you to stay by my side and learn things other than assassination? You have learned mercy. Kaylin looked up at her. Is mercy something beautiful? Eleanor closed her eyes. Of course. It is a dazzling and beautiful emotion. Mercy and love are always born together. Eleanor fell into thought. Mercy, is what I feel for him something like that too? Eleanor turned away. I'm going out for a while. Get some rest. She left the room, leaving Kaylin alone. I do not know, but one thing is certain. At this moment, I am very worried about him.